The massive chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward into darkness, its crystalline walls glowing with a soft blue light. Representatives from over 50 spacefaring civilizations sat in tiered rows, their attention focused on the small group of humans standing in the center of the floor. James Miller stood straight-backed, despite the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him. As Earth's chief ambassador, he had prepared for this moment his entire career, but nothing could have truly readied him for the sheer scale of alienness surrounding him. And you say Earth maintains a fleet of only 300 vessels? The Grand Speaker's voice boomed through the chamber. The creature, a towering being with iridescent scales, leaned forward on its hovering platform. "That is correct," Miller replied, his voice clear and steady. "Earth's defense fleet currently consists of 300 ships, all of them built within the last decade." A ripple of what could only be described as laughter spread through the chamber. Some of the alien delegates made sounds ranging from clicking noises to deep rumbles, while others flashed colors across their bodies in what their species considered amusement. 300 ships. A delegate from the Vindari Empire rose from their seat. Their massive form cast a shadow over the human delegation. "Our smallest border patrol fleet has more ships than your entire defense force. How do you expect to be taken seriously in galactic matters?" Miller maintained his diplomatic smile. "We believe quality is more important than quantity, honored delegate." This only sparked more laughter. The Vindari delegate's upper appendages waved dismissively. "Quality? Our smallest dreadnought is the size of your largest city. One of our ships could house your entire fleet inside its maintenance bay." Another delegate, a crystalline being from the Luminar Collective, chimed in. "Perhaps we should establish a protection agreement for Earth. It would be irresponsible to leave such a vulnerable species undefended." Miller felt his jaw tighten, but years of diplomatic training kept his expression neutral. Beside him, Captain Thomas Ward, the military attaché, shifted slightly. Miller could sense his friend's growing irritation. "We appreciate the concern," Miller responded, "but Earth is quite capable of defending itself." The Grand Speaker raised one of its primary limbs for silence. "Ambassador Miller, surely you understand our concern. The smallest spacefaring empire in this council maintains a fleet of at least 10,000 ships. The Vindari Empire alone commands a force of over 50,000 vessels. Your 300 ships, regardless of their quality, would be less than insignificant in any serious conflict." Miller nodded slowly. "Numbers can be deceiving, Grand Speaker. Humanity has always believed in efficiency over excess." "Efficiency?" The Vindari delegate's voice dripped with scorn. "Your ships are barely larger than our orbital shuttles. What possible efficiency could they offer?" Captain Ward stepped forward, his military medals catching the chamber's light. "If I may, Ambassador." After Miller's nod, he addressed the council. "Throughout human history, we've learned that bigger isn't always better. Our ships are designed based on centuries of warfare experience and technological innovation." This statement was met with more derisive sounds from the assembly. The Grand Speaker's scales shifted to a pattern that indicated polite disbelief. "Captain, while we respect Earth's martial history, planetary conflicts are vastly different from space warfare. The sheer scale is exactly what we've considered in our designs," Ward interrupted, earning shocked gasps from several delegates. "Every human ship is built with specific purpose and precision." "Enough of this foolishness," the Vindari delegate rumbled. "We've wasted enough time discussing these tiny toys. The Council should move on to actual matters of galactic importance." As the chamber erupted in agreements and more mocking laughter, Miller and Ward exchanged a quiet glance. They had expected this reaction, but the level of dismissiveness was still surprising. Earth's military command had debated whether to reveal more about their fleet's true capabilities, but in the end, they had decided some advantages were best kept hidden. As the human delegation was politely but firmly ushered to their designated observation seats, Miller leaned close to Ward and whispered, "They'll learn soon enough." Ward nodded, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Yes, they will. And I have a feeling they won't be laughing when they do. The council meeting continued, but the human representatives remained silent, listening and observing. They knew that sometimes the best response to mockery was patience. After all, humanity had a few surprises in store for their new galactic neighbors. The command center of Earth's Solar Defense Force hummed with activity. Admiral Robert Stone stood before the massive holographic display, watching as red dots representing Vindari ships moved closer to human space. His weathered face reflected the blue glow of the tactical screens. "They're getting bolder," Lieutenant Daniel Reed reported, pointing to a cluster of enemy signatures. "The Vindari have moved 3 battle groups to the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. That's less than 5 light-years from our colony." Admiral Stone rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The last 3 weeks, since the Galactic Council meeting, had seen increasingly aggressive movements from the Vindari Empire. What had started as simple posturing was quickly evolving into something more dangerous. "How many ships are we looking at?" Stone asked, though he already knew the answer. "Latest count shows approximately 10,000 vessels," Reed replied. "Most of them are capital ships, sir. The smallest is roughly the size of old Earth's Australia." Stone nodded slowly. Around him, the command staff continued their work, but he could sense their tension. The Vindari weren't being subtle about their intentions. Every movement, every deployment was designed to intimidate. A soft chime announced an incoming transmission. The main screen flickered to life, showing the familiar face of Ambassador Miller. He looked tired, the strain of constant diplomatic negotiations evident in his expression. "Admiral, the latest round of talks didn't go well," Miller reported. "The Vindari ambassador spent 3 hours explaining how they plan to protect our colonies. When I declined their offer, they suggested we were being unreasonable." "Unreasonable." Stone's voice carried a hint of amusement. "I suppose they're still mocking our fleet size." Miller's image nodded. "They've started calling us the tiny territory in council sessions. Their ambassador made a point of explaining how one of their cargo ships could probably defeat our entire fleet." "Let them think that," Stone replied. He turned to another screen where Earth's fleet status was displayed. 300 green dots, each representing a human vessel, blinked steadily. "How's the evacuation of the outer colonies proceeding?" "Ahead of schedule," Reed answered. "Though the colonists are asking questions, it's hard to keep something like this quiet." Stone understood their concern. Moving thousands of civilians without causing panic wasn't easy, especially when you couldn't explain the real reason. The public knew about the Vindari's aggressive posturing, but they didn't know about the fleet movements or the increasingly hostile diplomatic exchanges. "Sir," a young officer called out, "we're detecting new movement. The Vindari are conducting combat drills near Proxima Centauri. There, they're firing planet cracker weapons at abandoned asteroids." "A show of force," Stone muttered. "They want us to see what they're capable of." The command center fell silent as footage of the Vindari weapons test played on the main screen. Massive beams of energy split asteroids apart like they were made of paper. The display of power was impressive, Stone had to admit. It was also exactly what they had expected. "Admiral," Miller's voice drew attention back to his transmission. "The Vindari ambassador just delivered what they're calling a final warning. They're demanding we accept their protection and integrate our fleet into their command structure. We have 48 hours to respond." Stone straightened his uniform. "Then I suppose it's time to implement Operation Trojan. Send them our response. Earth respectfully declines their generous offer and maintains its right to independence." "They won't like that," Miller warned. "No," Stone agreed, "they won't. But they've made the same mistake others have made throughout human history, assuming that size and numbers are all that matter." He turned to address the command center. "Send the coded signal to all ships. Begin Operation Trojan. And get me a secure line to the President. It's time to show the galaxy why humanity has survived every threat we've ever faced." As the command center burst into activity, Stone looked back at the tactical display. The massive red fleet of Vindari ships still loomed threateningly near human space. But soon, very soon, they would learn why Earth had only built 300 ships. "They mock what they don't understand," Stone said quietly. "And that's exactly how we want it." The next 48 hours would change the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. The only question was, would the Vindari survive the lesson? The attack began at dawn, Earth Standard Time. The Vindari fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metal giants, their massive ships casting long shadows across the colony world of New Eden. 10,000 vessels, each one dwarfing anything humanity had publicly displayed. In the colony's main control center, Governor Mark Wilson watched the tactical display with a carefully neutral expression. Around him, his staff maintained their positions, showing none of the panic the Vindari probably expected. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies, sir," his communications officer reported. "They're demanding immediate surrender." Wilson nodded slowly. "Put them through on the main screen." The image of Fleet Commander Dax of the Vindari appeared, his massive form filling the screen. Multiple arms moved in what the Vindari considered a gesture of superiority. "This is your first and final warning," Dax announced, his translator converting the clicks and whistles of his native language. "Your pitiful defenses are nothing against our might. Surrender now, and we will be merciful." Wilson checked his watch. "Right on schedule." "I'm afraid I'll have to decline your generous offer," Wilson replied calmly. "New Eden remains under Earth's protection." The Vindari commander's skin rippled with colors that indicated amusement. "Protection. We've been monitoring your system for days. There isn't a single human warship within 5 light years of this colony. Your famous 300 ships are nowhere to be seen." "That's correct," Wilson agreed. "They're not here." Something in his tone made the Vindari commander pause, but only for a moment. "Then you have chosen extinction," Dax declared. "We will make an example of this colony. The galaxy will learn what happens to those who reject Vindari protection." The transmission cut off. On the tactical display, the massive Vindari fleet began moving into attack formation. Their ships arranged themselves in the traditional Vindari assault pattern, a giant sphere of destruction with their largest vessels at the core. "Time to target," Wilson asked. "They'll be in firing range in 5 minutes," his tactical officer responded. "Their weapon systems are charging. Energy readings are off the scale." Wilson opened a secure channel to Earth Command. "Admiral Stone, the Vindari are committing to the attack. All pieces are in position." "Understood, Governor." Stone's voice came back clear and confident. "You know what to do." Wilson turned to his staff. "Begin evacuation protocol Alpha. Let's show our guests what humanity has been preparing for." Across New Eden, hidden bunkers began opening. But instead of civilians fleeing in terror, automated defense systems emerged. Sophisticated holographic projectors activated, making the colony appear completely deserted. The Vindari fleet opened fire. Massive energy beams capable of cracking planets struck the colony's surface. But where they expected devastation, their sensors showed only minimal damage. "Sir," a Vindari sensor operator called out to Commander Dax. "Something's wrong. Our weapons, they're being deflected." "Impossible," Dax roared. "Their technology is primitive. They don't even have proper capital ships." In the colony's control center, Wilson watched as the Vindari fleet's coordinated attack began to falter. Their massive ships, so impressive in their size and power, were now finding themselves hitting advanced shield systems that Earth had kept hidden for exactly this moment. "Sir, we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures," the tactical officer announced. "The Vindari are calling for reinforcements." Wilson allowed himself a small smile. "No, they're not. Those signatures are ours." Across the battlefield, space itself seemed to tear open, but instead of Vindari reinforcements, something else emerged. Small, sleek shapes that the Vindari had mocked just weeks ago at the Galactic Council. The human fleet had arrived. 300 ships, each one barely visible against the backdrop of the massive Vindari vessels. They took up position around the colony, looking like tiny insects compared to the planet-sized warships they faced. Commander Dax's laughter boomed across the communications channel. This is your response. These tiny vessels against our mighty fleet. This will be over quickly. Wilson opened a channel to Admiral Stone's flagship. They've taken the bait, Admiral. The Vindari fleet is fully committed. Excellent, Stone replied. Then it's time to show them why size isn't everything. All ships, execute Operation Trojan. Phase 1 begins now. The Vindari were about to learn why humanity had chosen quality over quantity, and why, throughout Earth's history, underestimating humans had always been a fatal mistake. All ships, initiate transformation sequence. Admiral Stone's command echoed across the human fleet. Show them what 300 Earth ships can really do. The Vindari fleet had paused their attack, clearly amused by what they saw as humanity's futile last stand. Their massive ships loomed over the tiny human vessels, weapons charged and ready to obliterate what they believed to be Earth's entire defensive force. Commander Dax's voice boomed across all channels. Your bravery is admirable, but foolish. We will make this quick end. He stopped mid-sentence, his multiple eyes widening at what his sensors were showing him. The 300 human ships began to change. Sleek panels shifted and rotated. What had appeared to be solid hull plates split apart with precision. Each vessel's seemingly simple design revealed itself to be an intricate puzzle of interlocking components. Where there had been one ship, 5 separate vessels now hung in space, each one humming with power. What trickery is this? Dax demanded, his translator barely keeping up with his agitated clicks and whistles. Admiral Stone's voice was calm as he responded. No trickery, Commander. Just good old human engineering. You saw exactly what we wanted you to see at the Galactic Council. Now let us show you what you didn't see. The transformed human fleet now numbered 1,500 vessels, each one smaller but far more agile than their original forms. The Vindari tactical displays struggled to track the sudden multiplication of targets. Impossible, Dax roared. No species has mastered transformation technology at this scale. That's where you're wrong, Stone replied. Humanity has been perfecting this technology since before we reached the stars. We just never had a reason to show it until now. The human ships moved with incredible speed, their smaller size allowing them to maneuver in ways the massive Vindari vessels couldn't match. They darted between the enemy ships like schools of fish, their advanced targeting systems finding weak points that the Vindari had never needed to protect. In the colony's control center, Governor Wilson watched as the battle unfolded. The Vindari fleet's formation, so impressive moments ago, was now working against them. Their huge ships couldn't fire effectively without risking damage to their own vessels, and their weapons were designed to destroy large targets, not the swift, small craft that now surrounded them. Sir, Wilson's tactical officer reported, the human fleet is executing Protocol Wasp Nest. The Vindari are losing tracking capability. On the main display, the scene was chaos. The human ships moved in complex patterns, their paths seemingly random but actually following carefully planned attack vectors. Each group of 5 vessels worked in perfect coordination, striking from multiple angles before disappearing into the void. This is impossible. Dax's voice had lost its superiority. Our sensors cannot lock onto their ships. They move too quickly. Of course they do, Stone responded. We designed them that way. You boasted about your ships being the size of our cities. But tell me, Commander, what's easier to hit, a city or a swarm of hornets? The first Vindari ship fell, its massive hull breached in a dozen critical places by precision strikes. Then another and another. The mighty fleet that had seemed unstoppable was now finding itself in unfamiliar territory, fighting an enemy they couldn't effectively target. Admiral, One of Stone's bridge officers reported, "The Vindari are attempting to regroup. Their larger ships are trying to form a defensive sphere." Stone nodded. "Just as we predicted. All ships, prepare for Phase 2 of Operation Trojan. Show them our second surprise." The transformed human vessels regrouped with practiced precision. What happened next made even the Vindari command staff fall silent in shock. The separate ships began to combine, but not back into their original forms. Instead, they merged into entirely new configurations, creating medium-sized battle platforms that still outmaneuvered the Vindari ships, but now packed enough firepower to engage them directly. "You see, Commander," Stone's voice carried a hint of pride. "We didn't build only 300 ships. We built 300 ship systems, each one capable of fighting in multiple configurations. Welcome to the future of space warfare." The battle was far from over, but one thing was already clear. The galaxy would never again underestimate humanity's ingenuity. The battle above New Eden had transformed into something the Vindari had never experienced in their 1,000 years of space warfare. Their mighty fleet, which had confidently entered the system expecting an easy victory, now found itself fighting an enemy that defied conventional tactics. "Status report," Commander Dax demanded, his command center filled with frantic activity as his staff tried to cope with the chaos unfolding around them. "We've lost 30 capital ships," his tactical officer reported, voice trembling. "The human vessels, they're not just transforming anymore. They're combining into different configurations faster than our targeting systems can adapt." On the massive view screen, another Vindari dreadnought erupted in a series of precise explosions. The human ships had struck its weak points with surgical accuracy, their coordinated attacks bypassing shields that had been designed to withstand head-on assaults from capital ships. "Our formation is breaking apart," another officer announced. "The human vessels are exploiting the gaps between our ships. We can't maintain a defensive line." Dax watched in growing horror as his mighty fleet, the pride of the Vindari Empire, began to crumble. The human ships moved like a living organism, splitting apart and recombining as needed. When the Vindari concentrated their fire on one area, the human vessels would separate into smaller units and slip through their targeting nets. When the Vindari spread out to engage the smaller ships, the humans would combine into larger battle platforms and punch through their weakened lines. Aboard his flagship, Admiral Stone monitored the battle with calm efficiency. "All squadron leaders, execute Pattern Delta. Show them what Earth's tiny fleet can really do." The transformed human vessels moved with impossible precision. Decades of AI development and neural interface training allowed their crews to react faster than any conventional fleet. Ships that had combined into medium-sized battle platforms suddenly split apart again, becoming swarms of smaller craft that danced between the massive Vindari vessels. "Sir," Lieutenant Reed reported from his station, "the Vindari are trying to regroup around their command ship. They're pulling their surviving vessels into a defensive sphere." Stone nodded. Classic Vindari doctrine. When in doubt, gather around the biggest ship. He opened a channel to all Earth vessels. "All units, prepare to execute Maneuver Harrington. Let's show them why bigger isn't always better." The human fleet moved with practiced coordination. Smaller ships darted in and out of the Vindari formation, drawing fire and creating chaos. Meanwhile, the combined battle platforms took up position around the sphere of Vindari ships. "They're surrounding us," a Vindari officer shouted, "but their ships are still too small to breach our combined shields." Commander Dax gripped his command chair with multiple appendages. "Then we'll show them the true power of a unified Vindari fleet. All ships, concentrate shields, and prepare tow." He never finished the order. The human battle platforms suddenly split apart, their components reconfiguring in mid-flight. But instead of becoming smaller ships, they combined in a new way, forming a lattice of energy projectors around the Vindari fleet. "Energy spike," Dax's science officer screamed. "They're creating some kind of containment field." Admiral Stone's voice came through clear on all channels. "Commander Dax, you boasted about how one of your ships could house our entire fleet. Now let me show you why that was never our goal." The human ships activated their energy web. The massive Vindari vessels found themselves trapped in a network of gravitational forces, their size and power now working against them. The bigger they were, the more the field affected them. "Impossible," Dax roared. "This technology, this level of coordination, is exactly what humanity has been perfecting for centuries." Stone finished for him. "You saw our ships as tiny and insignificant. We saw them as pieces of a larger puzzle." The Vindari fleet, trapped in the energy web, could only watch as more of their ships succumbed to precision strikes from the transformed human vessels. Their mighty dreadnoughts, once symbols of their dominance, had become sitting targets. The battle wasn't over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. The galaxy was about to learn an important lesson about humanity. They didn't build weapons to match their enemy's size. They built them to exploit their enemy's weaknesses. And in this case, size had become the greatest weakness of all. Commander Dax's mighty flagship shuddered as another volley of precision strikes breached its secondary shields. Around him, the pride of the Vindari fleet lay in ruins. Nearly half of his 10,000 ships were either destroyed or disabled, their massive hulls now floating uselessly in space. "Commander," his tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. "The humans, they're combining their ships again, but this time it's different. The energy readings are beyond anything we've seen." Through the main viewport, Dax watched in disbelief as hundreds of transformed human vessels began an intricate dance of combination. Where before they had formed medium-sized battle platforms, now they were creating something entirely new. Admiral Stone's voice echoed through the command channel. "Commander Dax, you've seen our ships divide. You've seen them combine. Now let me show you our final configuration, what we call the Titan formation." The remaining human vessels merged with fluid precision. Smaller units locked together, energy fields interconnecting, until a massive shape began to take form. What had started as hundreds of individual ships was becoming something that rivaled the size of a Vindari dreadnought. "By the First Empire," Dax whispered, his translator barely picking up his words. "They can match our scale." "Not quite," Stone replied. "We don't match your scale. We exceed it. This is why we only built 300 ships. Each one is a piece of something far greater." The transformed human fleet had become 3 enormous vessels, each one bristling with weapons and defense systems that had been carefully hidden within the smaller ship components. These weren't just combined ships. They were purpose-built war machines whose true form had been disguised as a modest fleet. "All batteries, open fire," Dax ordered desperately. "Concentrate all power on those abominations." But the massive human constructs moved with the same precision as their smaller components. They flowed through space like liquid metal, their movements defying everything the Vindari knew about ships of that size. "You see, Commander," Stone's voice remained calm. "While you were building bigger ships, we were building smarter ones. Every piece of our fleet serves multiple purposes. We don't need 10,000 ships when each of our 300 can become whatever we need it to be." The 3 human megaships moved into attack position. Their weapons, now combined and enhanced by their unified form, released devastating barrages that cut through the Vindari fleet's remaining defenses like they were made of paper. In the colony's control center, Governor Wilson watched as the massive human constructs systematically dismantled the once mighty Vindari fleet. "Admiral Stone," he called over the secure channel, "the Vindari's formation is collapsing. Their ships are breaking ranks." The scene in space had become chaos. Vindari vessels, despite their enormous size, were trying to retreat in panic. But their bulk made them easy targets for the transformed human ships, which could still split apart at will to intercept fleeing vessels before recombining into their larger forms. "Commander," Dax's second-in-command approached his position. "We've lost contact with 60% of our fleet. The humans, they're not just defeating us. They're showing us how outmatched we've been from the start. Dax stared at the tactical display, watching as more of his ships fell to the human assault. Everything he had believed about military power, about the superiority of size and numbers, was crumbling before his eyes. "Admiral Stone," Dax finally transmitted, his voice heavy with defeat. "The Vindari Empire requests terms for surrender." "Accepted," Stone replied. "Stand down your remaining ships, and we can begin discussions." As the massive Vindari fleet powered down their weapons, the human megaships began to separate again, returning to their original forms. The demonstration was complete. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity's tiny fleet had never been tiny at all. It had simply been waiting for the right moment to reveal its true nature. In the aftermath of the battle, as damaged Vindari ships limped away under escort, Admiral Stone sent one final message to Commander Dax. "Remember this day, Commander. It's not the size of the fleet that matters. It's the ingenuity of those who built it." The same Galactic Council chamber that had once echoed with mockery now sat in stunned silence. Holographic displays showed the battle footage from New Eden, documenting how Earth's tiny fleet had systematically dismantled one of the largest military forces in known space. Ambassador Miller stood at the center of the chamber, exactly where he had stood weeks earlier when the Council had laughed at Earth's defense capabilities. But no one was laughing now. "As you can see," Miller addressed the assembly, his voice carrying across the silent chamber, "humanity's approach to space warfare is somewhat different from what you expected." The Grand Speaker's scales had shifted to a deep blue, indicating deep thought and concern. "Ambassador Miller, your demonstration was most enlightening. The Council has clearly misjudged Earth's military capabilities." "Not just our capabilities," Miller corrected politely. "You misjudged our entire approach to space warfare. While the galaxy focused on building bigger ships, humanity focused on building smarter ones." The Vindari representative was notably absent, but their empty seats spoke volumes. Reports indicated that their empire was already requesting peace negotiations with Earth, their previous arrogance replaced by a healthy respect for human ingenuity. Admiral Stone stepped forward, standing beside Miller. His presence in the Council chamber was unprecedented, but after the Battle of New Eden, no one dared object. "What you witnessed," Stone explained, "was the result of centuries of human military evolution. We learned long ago that adaptability trumps raw power. Each of our ships is designed to be part of a greater whole, capable of transforming to meet any tactical situation." Murmurs spread through the chamber as various species discussed the implications. The crystalline delegate from the Luminar Collective raised their form in a gesture of acknowledgement. "We offer our sincere apologies for our previous dismissiveness," they chimed. "Clearly, Earth's military technology far exceeds our understanding. Would you be willing to share some of this knowledge?" Miller smiled diplomatically. "Earth is always open to peaceful technological exchange. However, we hope this demonstration has made one thing clear. We are not a species to be underestimated or patronized." The Grand Speaker's scales shifted to a pattern indicating agreement. "Indeed, the Council proposes an immediate revision of Earth's status within the galactic community. Your technological achievements and military capabilities clearly qualify you for full membership rights." "We accept," Miller replied, "on one condition." The chamber grew quiet again, waiting. The galaxy must understand that size and numbers are not the only measure of strength. Every species has its own approach to solving problems. Instead of mockery, perhaps we should all learn from each other's innovations. As if to emphasize his point, a hologram appeared showing one of Earth's ships transforming from its standard configuration into 5 separate vessels, then combining with others to form a larger battle platform. The display drew gasps of appreciation from the assembled delegates. "The Vindari Empire has already requested our help in redesigning their fleet," Stone added. "They've learned that bigger isn't always better. Sometimes, the most effective solution comes in a smaller, more adaptable package." The Grand Speaker rose from its platform, making a formal gesture of respect. Earth has taught the galaxy a valuable lesson. From this day forward, no species contributions will be judged by size alone. As the council session concluded, new agreements were already being drafted. Earth would share some of its transformation technology in exchange for other advanced sciences. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, not through conquest, but through demonstration. Later, as Miller and Stone prepared to return to Earth, they stood looking out at the massive ships of various species docked around the council station. "Do you think they've really learned their lesson?" Stone asked. Miller watched as a small Earth vessel maneuvered gracefully between two enormous alien dreadnoughts. "I think they've learned several lessons. Never judge by appearance alone. Never underestimate humanity. And most importantly, size isn't everything." Stone finished with a smile. "Exactly," Miller agreed. "Though I hear there's a new saying spreading through the galaxy. Beware the small fleet, for it might be human." The galaxy had indeed entered a new era, and humanity, with its tiny fleet of transforming ships, had earned its place among the stars not through size or numbers, but through innovation, adaptability, and the uniquely human ability to turn perceived weakness into unprecedented strength.